everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the second video of my Watercolor Art Materials series. I talked about watercolor paint in my first one, and this video is all about paper. My experience with different types and brands of paper, which paper is my favorite, and what is important to me when it comes to choosing paper for my watercolor work. When you first learn watercolor, you often hear that painting on cotton, professional quality paper, is very important for achieving good results. I do agree, but there are other things to keep in mind too. Yes, I choose high quality paper when it comes to my standalone paintings, but for my sketchbooks, I will paint on literally anything, as I love discovering the way paint behaves on different surfaces and all the cool effects it can create on different types of paper. And when it comes to learning to paint, I recommend practicing on any paper you have available. To get better at painting, you simply need some brush miles. You need to create a lot of art, a lot of bad art as well. And working on cheaper paper helps you feel less precious about the results, as you are not scared of ruining an expensive sheet of 100% cotton paper. Cheaper paper lets you feel less precious and less scared to experiment and to make a mess. And all these are so important for your growth as an artist. So paint on anything and everything to build your skills and to become more confident in using your watercolor materials. So traditionally, watercolor paper comes in 3 finishes: hot press, which is smooth paper with no texture; cold press, it has some tooth to it; and rough, a more pronounced texture. I have painted on all 3, and cold press is my favorite for my subject of choice, landscapes. For the size I usually paint on, and I usually paint quite small. Hot press is fun too, but the paint slides around on its surface because it's very smooth, and the wet on wet effects are not really what I'm after. I have some painting demonstration videos and a comparison video between hot press and cold press that I will share in the description, so you can see the way the paint acts on the cold press versus hot press surface. It is easier to lift paint off the hot press paper surface, but granulation has a very different look to it, and I prefer the way it looks on cold press, and I use a lot of granulating pigments, so this is important to me. So I have these landscapes painted on hot press, so you can see that some effects like blooms are much easier to achieve, but granulation looks quite different. So this is the granulating effect. Now with rough paper, if I paint larger, I love the highly textured surface, but for smaller paintings it's just too strong for me. So the granulation is very pronounced, but to me the washes for smaller paintings look slightly messier than they would on cold press paper. Also, watercolor paper comes in different weights. It can be thinner or thicker, ranging from 110 GSM, grams per square meter, to 640 GSM. In the imperial system, the weight of paper is measured in pounds, so these numbers would be different. So 300 GSM paper would be 140 pounds, and 640 GSM paper is approximately 300 pounds. The thicker the paper, the more water and paint it can handle. It also buckles less. So for me, 300 GSM / 140 pounds is a great weight for my standalone landscapes. For sketchbooks, I can paint on very thin paper without any problems. I have also tried the 640 300-pound paper. It's great, also pricey, but it is almost too stiff for me, so I would use it if I needed to create a much larger painting, for example. So it is quite thick. With watercolor paper, it's not just the 100% cotton, but also the sizing of the paper that makes a difference. Maybe you have heard people mention that you don't paint on paper, you paint on sizing. And sizing is a substance that is added to the paper so it can handle the paint and the water without absorbing them. Traditionally, the sizing for watercolor paper is made from gelatin, And from what I have read, the sizing recipes can vary between manufacturers. I guess just like when it comes to different binders used by different paint makers for their watercolor paint. So good quality paper also comes with good quality sizing, making the paper able to handle a lot of water and paint and repeated glazing, and also lifting paint or using masking tape without damaging the surface of the paper. And I believe good sizing also makes the paper less prone to creating blooms and backgrounds, as these are generally not considered a good thing in traditional watercolor painting. I actually really like those effects, so that's not a big problem for me. You can't go wrong with the artist grade paper by well-known brands like Arches or Arch, whatever way you choose to pronounce it. Fabriano, Saunders Waterford, Canson Heritage, or Bao Hong. These are the ones I have experience with, and all these papers are similar, but I have noticed some difference in the texture of cold press paper between them, especially with Saunders Waterford, so it's something to keep in mind. So for my landscapes, I paint on 100% cotton 300 GSM or 140 pound paper, cold press paper by Bao Hong. It's very easy to find here in Australia, and the quality is amazing. This paper has never let me down. I have been using it almost exclusively for the last 4 or so years. It handles a lot of water and paint beautifully. It can take many layers of paint, and when I use masking tape, this paper never rips. And it also stays wet for a long time, which is great for our hot summers. So Bao Hong has 2 grades of paper, Academy and Master's Choice. So the Academy is like student quality paper, and Master's Choice is considered professional quality paper. To be honest, there is not much difference between them. The Academy one is very, very good. It's just slightly less textured, maybe slightly less white than the Master's Choice one, but I have painted on this one a lot. I have no complaints about it. It is great value for money. I also really like painting on Fabriano Artistico, and Arches is considered the king of watercolor paper. It is on the pricier side, at least here in Australia. I usually purchase my paper in blocks, as I love the convenience of having the paper already pre-stretched and ready to go. I like them because I don't have to cut the paper to size and then look for a board to tape the paper to. It is less economical to buy blocks of paper than sheets of paper, but I usually stock up when the blocks go on sale on my favorite art supplies websites. And I also do buy sheets of paper in case I run out of blocks or if they sell out. Cotton watercolor paper is expensive, which can result in the fear of the white paper when you're feeling frozen before the start of a painting session because you're afraid of ruining this gorgeous surface. I certainly used to have this fear, and this is what helped me. When buying 100% cotton cold press paper, I looked for cheaper alternatives to Arches to try. And I discovered Bao Hong Academy and also Winsor & Newton professional watercolor blocks, which I really enjoyed painting on. I have also heard that Meaden's watercolor paper is made by Bao Hong as well, but I haven't tried it yet. So the more you paint and practice, the sooner that fear of the white paper will dissipate. And if you end up with a painting you do not like, just flip the paper, practice on the other side. I have a pile of failed paintings that I use for color swatches or for trying new techniques. I also wanted to share a little story about overcoming the fear of white paper. I always wanted to be an artist ever since I was a child. I painted a lot when I was a kid. I took art classes too, but I stopped painting when I was around 16. Every now and then, I would come back to painting and try to get more serious about it, but it would only last a few months. I used to attend art classes at a local art society in Sydney. At some point between 2008 or 9, I was buying cotton paper for those classes. I think there were blocks of Saunders Waterford and also Arches. Eventually, I stopped painting again, so I packed it all away for around 10 years. Then I returned to painting in 2019 and I rediscovered all that leftover paper stored in boxes in the shed. And I think those boxes survived 3 house moves. It felt like a gift from me in the past to me in the present because I had all that paper to practice on without spending a fortune. It didn't feel too precious and it made me keep painting, keep practicing without being scared that I would ruin that beautiful paper. The only thing, the sizing on some of the sheets had gone off. The paint would soak through the paper and it looked very dull. It kind of felt like painting on a piece of paper towel. So it is a bit of a risk to keep that paper for this long. But I still have some arches that I bought for $5 more than 15 years ago. It's actually still good. I've used a few sheets from here. They are perfectly fine still. Coming back to different cotton papers, there is also handmade paper. I was gifted some, but I can't say it worked for me because the texture was too heavy and the sizing was not what I was used to, and the colors, to me, they look quite dull. It looks so beautiful, but it's pretty much the only paper that hasn't worked for me. There is also an option of cellulose paper or cellulose/cotton. I have used this paper, Walkingford paper by St. Cuthbert's Mill. It is actually quite nice, but since it's cellulose, the paint lifts easier in my experience, so glazing would be harder on it. Because the initial wash can be easily disturbed, and also it is more prone to blooms. Also, if you use masking fluid or masking tape, the cellulose paper rips easily, but with masking tape you can actually heat it up with a hairdryer before you need to remove it, and it will soften the glue, so there are less chances of the paper ripping. I really like this paper for line and wash. This is really good paper to practice on. I highly recommend it. Also, I do not stretch my paper. I find that the 300 GSM paper I use, it doesn't buckle that much, and for cotton paper you can actually flatten your painting after finishing it by misting the back of the paper with water and putting lots of heavy books on top. And there are many videos here on YouTube demonstrating the process, so that can be easily fixed. So Baohong Master's Choice is currently my favorite paper, and I also love Fabriano Artistico Arches, and Winsor & Newton Professional watercolor blocks, although I haven't painted on them in years, so I hope the quality is still the same as it used to be around 4 or so years ago. Let's move on to my sketchbooks. I use everything. I have both cotton paper ones and cellulose paper sketchbooks. And some cotton ones are quite different to the traditional watercolor paper. So if it says a sketchbook is made with cotton paper, the paint would not necessarily act on it the same way it acts on, say, Arches, Fabriano, Baohong. I bought a bunch of these visual journals by Winsor & Newton, but despite the fact that it says 100% cotton, the paper rips very easily when using masking tape here, which was quite unexpected, and the texture is more in between hot press and cold press rather than cold press, so it's quite smooth. I really liked this sketchbook I got off Amazon. When I was buying it, it said it was cotton. It didn't look like cotton to me at first, but once I started painting on it, the experience of the actual painting process on it was really nice. So I do believe it is cotton. The paper is quite thick, so this was quite a nice one. Now I have these ones by Millini. They are great for line and wash. They're cellulose, and I use this one as my travel sketchbook because when I travel I do not really paint much on location, but I do enjoy really fast mixed media sketches. Talking about cheap paper and painting on cheap paper, so this sketchbook from Kmart, which is our Australian budget department store, this was $4, less than the price of a cup of coffee. I bought it for fun. I thought, okay, I did not expect much, but I'm going to grab it. It has actually surprised me with how well it handles the washes. The sizing is of quite a decent quality. It has never leaked, and the paint acts on it in a very similar way it acts on cold press paper. It proves that you never know when it comes to buying watercolor sketchbooks, because some really cheap ones can pleasantly surprise you and some more expensive ones can easily disappoint you. You can have some really nice effects on cellulose paper because the blooms and the backgrounds are more pronounced, and the brush marks can be more pronounced too. I quite like this lighthouse sketch and the way the brush marks are and the edges. So this particular effect is harder to achieve on cold press cotton paper. So to sum it up, I love 100% cotton paper for my landscapes, and I also love experimenting on all kinds of paper in sketchbooks, because I believe getting to know your materials very well and understanding how the paints act on different types of paper is very important. So I hope this video provided you with some useful insights into watercolor paper and how different types can impact your painting. Remember, there is no single right choice. It's all about experimenting, playing, and finding what works best for you. Feel free to share your experience with different papers in the comments section. Tell me what your favorite paper to paint on is, or if you have had any surprising experiences with different sketchbooks or brands of paper. And if you have any questions, as always, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching and happy painting!